So I met most of you already over in there, but I never really officially introduced myself. My name is Nancy Talbott, and I have been involved in this wonderful breed since 1976 when I got my first one. Do not anybody say, oh, I wasn't even born then, because I know that. But anyway, 1976, I got my first golden retriever from the penny saver, you know, like the little penny saver.
Oh my God.
Because somebody had puppies down the block, and she was $250, which for 1976 was like the money. But I was finally a grad student, and I had a house that would allow a dog. So I got Heather, who turned out to be undersized, had terrible skin, was dysplastic, and used to attack other dogs at random. So she was a great first start of the breed. I did obedience with her. I met at an obedience trial in Northern California. I met a dog that took my breath away. And the day I was there, he won first in the sporting group and high end trial. And I said, I think that's what I want instead of Heather. So, and I kept Heather for a little while longer. Then she blinded a friend's turf puppy in one eye, and so she went away. But it was crushing. The dog that I fell in love with was a dog called Champion OTCH Sunstreak of Cullenwood, TDWCX. Phenomenal dog, and I got a son of his for my second dog. And I was so lucky, from a kennel called Beckwith Kennels in Washington. I was really lucky because my first show dog became a Champion UD-WCX. There were no hunt tests back then. And he did all of that with me knowing nothing. What I have learned from that experience, and having dogs a lot since then, I didn't know how lucky I was, because I started out with a dual purpose dog who had talent. And despite me, learned to do a triple and a water double and honor, and I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I realized how hard that is, so I got very fortunate. I have now come full circle from being really just involved in conformation. I did obedience in some field, JH level only, and now I have the great pleasure of spending more time with people who do all of it. And so my next golden is going to be trained to master.
Oh boy.
That is my goal. I made the mistake of saying to someone I was going to train the dog to senior, and I got a look and I said, no, we don't train to senior. Right. Okay. So anyway, it has really kind of brought me full circle. And so what I'm going to do today is take a few pieces of the standard out, and we're going to talk about those. We're not going to go through the whole standard. We only have a short time today, and that's impossible. So we're going to do a few pieces of it. So this is your seminar. I'm going to make sure this isn't my computer.
I'm going to turn lights down so I can.
Just real brief. I know some of you were probably last year at Ocala at the National, so you've seen a lot on the history. So we're just going to briefly talk about this again. This is the ruins of Gushkin House in northern Scotland, and we're just going to talk about the terrain, the vision, and the purpose of where this breed came from. Until you know what your breed was bred to do and why it exists in the first place, you really can't understand the standard. So we have to know that vision and that purpose. And I'm sorry if I'm going to be in your way a lot.
No,
so
you're
just,
good. I'm fine.
Okay.
I can always move if I need to.
And I don't have a remote.
I
clicker,
know.
so that's okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about this so we understand when we're talking about coat and we're talking about stamina. So that star in Scotland, that is Inverness, which is close to where the town of Tomic is. Tomic is the village that grew up around the estate. So remember back in the day, they would build a huge estate someplace, and then they would build a village for all the workers to work the estate. So that's where the town of Tomic came from. That star there is where Inverness is. And here's what I want you to notice. Look at the North Sea. This is in the North Sea and the North Atlantic, but then look at the latitude. Sweden. Okay? This is not a Mediterranean climate. This is harsh. Winters are harsh. The terrain is harsh. It's cold. It's wet. When I was in Scotland, it rained a little every day. The cover is wet and it's deep, and it's full of these horrible little bird things. And no-see-ums, which are these nasty little things that bite you. They're like the teeniest thing and they hurt a lot. But Scotland is very far north. And I think that's important for us to remember. That this is not a dog from the southern climes of the tropics. Well, you can't see that. That's just a hillside. But one word is rain. I talked about that. Part of every day. And if it's not raining, it's probably snowing. This is a picture of Lord Tweedmouth's daughter with one of the first golden retrievers. So here's what I want you to notice. Do they look that different than what we have today? So when people say they've changed so much, the breed has really changed, it's okay, it's really evolved. No, that was one of the originals from F1 generation with one of the original owners. And that could be a golden as CCA today. So the breed hasn't changed that much. Our goal, our job as preservationist breeders is to keep them pretty much the way they were. We can make improvements structurally, but that is really what they look like. And then this I think is really important too. This is some of the original, the first generation and second generation dogs on the estate in Scotland. Again, they're recognizably golden retrievers. They haven't changed that much. They may have a little bit different heads now. The coats may look a little different, but they don't need to. We're going to talk a lot about coats today. They were an estate hunting retriever. When you hear people say they were a gentleman's hunting retriever, don't think that that meant that they just walked along. No, the terrain was like this. There were deep ditches, there were streams, there were cold lakes, there were hills, there were rocks. When I walked around the estate in Scotland, you can't walk without some ankle breaking thing happen. It's not even ground. So these were not gentlemen's hunting dogs that just walked along quietly. They were an estate hunting retriever, which means they had to get along with other dogs very well, because there were a lot of dogs out there. In any one field, there might be 50 people wandering around with guns, some springers, some pointers, and some retrievers. So temperament was crucial. They had to get along with each other. They had to be amenable. They had to be biddable. There is a video that I wish I could show you, but we don't have the wireless connection to do that. I, though, will send a link to Robin and she can forward it to you. It's called Zero to Hero. It's a video of a golden retriever who, I think he was second in the national UK British trial, which was held in Scotland. It's a great video because it shows you the terrain, the cover, what these dogs had to do in northern Scotland, which is where the breed originated. And with all the Labradors, my favorite one, and I have Labs too, so I'm an equal opportunity person, but one of my favorite things is a video. Here's how the trials work over there. One dog goes out, there's a couple dogs walking along together. One dog goes out, if that dog doesn't come up with the bird, it's called in, the next dog gets to go. So the Labrador comes in, no bird. They send the golden, and he goes up and over and gone. He's out of sight, so they have somebody that's a spotter up and over the hill to with a walkie-talkie tell the handler where the dog is, because the handler can't see the dog anymore. And the handler is yelling things to the dog because the dog can't see it. And that dog picked up the bird, and it's like the hero. Yeah. So, but that dog did what the lab couldn't do. And so it's a great video, and I think you'll really like it. It's on YouTube, but I'll send the link to Robin, and then she can share it. Yeah, it's on YouTube, so it's open. So it's a great video. It was, Klaus Davern actually saw it first, and she called me and she said, "Oh my God, I'm sending you a link. Open it right now." Right now? Okay. But anyway, great stuff. So I think you'll enjoy seeing that. The Goldens were not bred for competition originally. We are a competitive species. We like titles. We like winning. Okay? That's a human thing. But these dogs were bred to pick up the birds on the estate when he had hunting parties come in. So we have to remember that. These were not bred for competition. British hunting styles and trials are very different. There's some, in this video, you'll see the dog going over about it's probably a fence this tall, like a 5-strand fence, over the fence, up the hill, through the valley, up and over, coming back with, I don't know if it was a goose or a big mallard, up and over the 5-strand fence. That's just normal, that's what they do, because that's hunting, that's an actual hunting situation. So, British style hunting, I think it's interesting to watch those videos. But those are the dogs from back in the day. That is what they look like. They are recognizably golden retrievers. Okay? It also talks about, people talk about British style golden retrievers being cream. They were not. Okay? They did not start out cream. I don't have a problem with cream because people have developed it, they like that. I don't care. Their standards, ours is the only standard that doesn't recognize it, but the original ones were not. I went to England to the International Golden Retriever Symposium. I can't even remember what year it was. But guess what the biggest fight was from people all over the country and all over the world was on color. And I thought, well, this is just like being at home again. But even in the UK, they were fighting about color. So it's just a preference. All right, Zero to Hero, this is going to be the link and I'll send that to you. So here's the key points for the day. We're going to talk about structure, especially the front assembly puzzle. Because the front assembly is the most, it's the most confusing to people and the least understood. Okay, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about proportion, feet, because feet matter in a dog that has to do the work that it has to do. We're going to talk about movement, functional movement, and coat. We can't possibly cover the whole standard in a short time, so we're going to really pick on these, okay? This is why, because those are the things, this is primarily a hunting dog. He should be shown in hardworking condition. Kudos to all of you that I said this dog has great muscle tone, okay? They should be shown in hardworking condition. When I judge in conformation, they are not all in hardworking condition at all, which is where you see some sloppy top lines, kind of mushy thighs. And this is the last sentence of our first paragraph. So the first paragraph of every standard gives you the vision, purpose, and overall picture of a breed. So every morning, if I'm judging, I wake up and I flip through all the breeds I'm doing that day and I read the first paragraph again. Because that gives me the overall purpose of the breed and the vision. This is the last sentence. Overall appearance, balance, gait, and purpose to be given more emphasis than any component part. That means I may like a really good head, and I do, but this is not a head breed. This is an overall appearance, balance, gait, and purpose. We're going to focus on the purpose piece because they are primarily a hunting dog. Okay? Anything that detracts from that, to the degree to which it detracts, is a fault. And that's what this says in our standard. So read that. And remember that when you are choosing dogs, or you're choosing breeding stock or anything, this is an important statement. To the degree to which it interferes with the breed's purpose. And so when we're talking about extremes, that's what we want to avoid. Okay, so the mystery and frustration of the front assembly. Here's one of the first problems with the front assembly. The scapula, and I'll show you the diagram of all the parts in a minute. The scapula is not a ball and socket joint where it comes up and meets the withers. It is more a free-floating bone. It is held in place by tendons, ligaments, muscles. Okay? Elbow, hip, the patella, no, the patella's got, the knee has the patella, that's kind of what's holding it with ligaments and bones. But if you think of a hip socket, you've got ball and socket joining like this. The elbow has things that are joining it. When you look at the scapula, the angle that it comes up into the spine, there's no socket there. So that becomes a difficult thing. It's one of the hardest things to determine in a puppy when you're evaluating a litter. So when you're looking at shoulder layback in an 8-week-old puppy, I have long ago learned not to worry so much about the angle of that bone at that age because it's going to change, without a doubt. I'm looking at the length of that bone in comparison to the upper arm. I want that to be there, and I want the angle at the upper arm to be a certain way. But that's gonna change up and down. And I think a lot of people have been very frustrated over time because they thought that puppy had great layback at 8 weeks, and it doesn't end up that way. So that's one of the frustrations about front assembly. The upper arms are here about the same length as the blades, setting the elbows, I'm gonna really push this one, setting the elbows back beneath the upper tip of the blades. One of the biggest problems in our breed right now is the front assembly, and the elbows are not returning under the dog the way they should. They're set forward, and I have lots of pictures to show you what that looks like. Close to the ribs without looseness. I should not be able to put my fist between the elbow and the rib cage. That's not elbows close to the rib without looseness. And so I'll show you what that all looks like. When it says fairly close together at the withers, I get asked this all the time. Well, how many fingers is that? I won't give that answer because a 24.5-inch male and a 21-inch bitch is gonna have a different number of fingers between the shoulder blade. So there really is no answer for that. I can't tell you how many inches or fingers those shoulder blades should be. The standard says fairly close together at the withers, so that's what we have to go with. Fairly close together. If your hand comes down your dog's neck and it slams into shoulder blades up here that are wide, that's a problem. They should blend smoothly into the back and be fairly close together at the withers. So here's some anatomy, and I did this just to make sure we're all on the same vocabulary. That bone is called the scapula, okay, also called the shoulder blade. That is the withers. The withers is the highest point where the shoulders come into and meet with the neck, and the neck and the back come together. It's the highest point. I want you to notice something. Does the bone come all the way up there? No, that's skin and bone and muscle that's covering the scapula. So that's why when you're checking for shoulders, you have to get in here and find the shoulder blade. It's also why when you're measuring a dog with a wicket, you have to make sure that you're finding that highest point. Because this dog, especially in a breed that has disqualifications, if I measure this dog here at the withers, or here, I can have 3/4 or an inch difference in a big dog. So it's important when you're measuring, I know in agility you want as short as possible. And so, I mean, I've seen people measure for agility and they're measuring down the back. They're not measuring at the withers, because that dog's taller. So make sure that you know where the withers are. It's the highest point. Okay, scapula. That is the humerus, or the upper arm. The bone is called the humerus. In dogs, we call it upper arm. The elbow is right there, and we use the elbow in dogs to mean the back. Okay, the elbow joint goes all the way through to the front too, but when we're saying elbow, it's the elbow. Okay, it's in the That's the forearm, or the radius and ulna. In the back, we have, oh, that was rear pastern, but it's not on the slide. So. That's the croup. Now, here's something that is often misunderstood. The croup is a part of the spine. The croup is not the pelvis itself. And notice the difference between the slope of the croup and the slope of the pelvis. Okay, when we say a slightly sloping croup, we mean the spine, and you can see it on this picture, how you've got the spine coming along and then there's a little slope in the croup before the tail. That's what the croup is. The croup is not the pelvic bone itself. Okay, that's something else. That is the pelvis, or the sacrum. Then we have the femur. We have the knee, or stifle. That's what that joint is. The lower leg, or the fibula and tibia. And then we have the hock joint, which is different than the rear pastern. You can't really see that, but I'm going to show you because Paige Elliott said something in a seminar once, and I will never forget it. We often call this here the hock. This area between the hock joint and the pastern, or the foot, we call this the hock. That dog has a lot of hair on its hocks. No, that is the hock. It's a joint. This is the rear pastern. Paige Elliott, Rachel Paige Elliott, who wrote a book called Dog Steps, was at a Golden Retriever seminar in Washington once with us. And somebody was talking about the hawks, meaning this, the rear pastern, and she very politely said, I would like to make a correction. And she said, the hawk is a joint. What you are referring to is the rear pastern. Well, when Paige Elliott said something, you don't forget it. And so I was doing the same thing. So when we're talking about hawk, it is a joint, okay? The knee or the stifle is a joint. The standard says well-bent stifle. It is talking about this joint. That you want an actual bend in here, you don't want it to be straight. Okay, so there's our terms. And here's what happened. Now this is, and Marsh has been wonderful to give me permission to use this. So this is, and I will guarantee that dog is exactly 12 to 11, because Marcia would never allow it to be up here if it wasn't. I'm sure it was measured to the tiniest millimeter. That dog is 12 to 11, and it has balance of angles. Okay, so here's what I mean by balance of angles. Front angle here is pretty close to this angle here. Okay, these are the angles that we are looking at because it dictates what happens here. We have another angle that happens between the knee joint and the hock joint. But really, when you're talking about balance of angles, it's those. Okay, so this dog is in balance, and that dog is 12 to 11, so his proportion is correct. This is what happens when we start changing things in the breed. So if I straighten out that femur, and I create this instead, now is that dog, are those dogs' angles balanced?
No.
They are not at all.
The dog
Okay.
is gonna tear its ACL.
The dog what?
It's gonna tear its ACL.
It probably will tear its, that's just a knee injury waiting to happen, okay? That is overangulation. So if you hear about a dog with something that's overangulated, that's what this is. The angle and the length of these bones has been changed, so the dog is now standing behind itself. Okay, there's not a lot of stability. If you drop a plumb line from the point to the hip, straight down, it should fall right in front of that foot. That's a dog in balance. Straight line down. This, when you drop a straight line, look how much distance there is. This dog's toe is way back here. Now, it's going to look fancy, but it's very incorrect. And the dog will have a hard time moving. That dog would have to have a front like a German Shepherd to move correctly. Okay, so that dog is now out of balance because it has the wrong angles in the back. We can change it the other direction. This dog would be too straight in the stifle. Okay, that angle of bone comes down, but then there's not enough angle of the lower leg to the hock. This dog is also going to be out of balance and prone to injury. Now it has more front angulation than it does in the rear. It's still out of balance. And remember that that sentence, overall appearance, balance, gait, and purpose. Symmetry, nature seeks symmetry in a natural form. And this is not symmetry. As soon as you change these angles, you have now taken away the balance. So, is one of these a worse fault than the others? I would say no. They're both out of balance. Neither one is more correct than the other. And on this dog, by the way, this one with the yellow, and there were several today that I mentioned to owners. This dog is going to have a much more likelihood of a slip tongue because there's not enough stability here for that hock to remain stable. So when I see this in the ring, and the dog baits forward, sometimes they'll actually subluxate their own hock, just standing there. But I can guarantee often if I put a little pressure, it's going to just push that hock forward and slip hop. So too straight in the rear, and then you're going to get that. So now we're going to change the front. What we are seeing frequently today is what I'm going to put up here now in red, where the shoulder blades now are going. They're way up in the neck. Okay, there's not a smooth layback. Your hand comes down, it's going to run into shoulder blades because now they're up in the neck. So this dog upper arm may be fine, haven't changed that. Okay, and that's all fine. The green, ignore the green. So what we have now is the upper arm is still well underneath the rib cage where it should be, but you have a more vertical shoulder blade. That's going to not be a smooth moving dog. That causes a lot of dogs to move wide in the front. They get very over muscled up here. The shoulder blades end up wide and steep. So that is a problem. The other problem is now the green line is the shoulder blade is fine. The shoulder blade is well laid back, but now you have an upper arm that doesn't have the angle, and the dog is going to stand in front of itself. Whoops. I didn't put the feet on the front. I don't know why. That is a very common thing. Now, those of us who have been in the breed a long time, in the 80s and 90s, this was the normal golden front. Good layback, vertical upper arm. Okay, that's what they all were like. Breeders actually have made a concerted effort to improve that angle, but here's what's happened. We had this good layback, straight upper arm. All we've done is we've shifted it.
Yeah.
We haven't changed the angle. Now we have the upper arm and a vertical shoulder blade. So it's good intentions. We used to in the 80s and 90s, we used to have shoulders like the green one. That was the normal golden shoulder in the ring. Now the normal golden shoulder in the ring is more the red one. So I think all we've done is we've shifted the angle, we've tipped it, but the angle hasn't changed. Which to me as a breeder, if I were still breeding, I'd be like, okay, I have to figure out the angle has to change, not just where it sits on the body. So it's something to be aware of. We're gonna talk a little bit about how it looks, but I want you just to look at the green one for a minute. If I draw a line now underneath that dog, it's going to look 2 or 3 inches longer than the correct dog. Because now the front is standing up in front of it, and I've got a lot more underneath. So just try to visualize that. I'm gonna show you some pictures of it in a minute. So this is what happens when you change the normal angles and balance of a golden retriever into something maybe more stylized. It also, another thing that's gonna happen with the blue rear is the sloping top line.
Mm-hmm.
Because that dog, in order to stand on its feet in the back like that, almost has to slope its back. So again, think of German Shepherds and the slope that they have because they have all that rear. So, here's what it looks like in the flesh. I want you to look at these two dogs. What I want you to look at is the elbow. Just look at where the elbow is and how much space there is between the elbow and your hand and the rib cage, and how much of your hand you can put in there. So the dog on the left, see how that elbow comes right back underneath that rib cage? And you would have a hard time just getting your hand in there. The dog on the right, I could probably put a fist in there. Okay? That, and I'm sorry that the dog on the left isn't a full-on side shot, but also look how long the underline looks under the dog on the right, because his front is set in front of him. So that's an example of a vertical upper arm. And I can show you where the shoulder blades probably are on this dog. Makes me want to go like this and feel them, but I can't. So, shoulder blade coming to here, and then we have the upper arm. So that is not the same length, and it's certainly not sitting back underneath it. This dog can't even find a space there. So when people ask me, how do you, when you're examining a golden, how do you look at that? When I go over a golden, anybody who's watched me does it, I go over the dog, and then I stand here with the tail out myself. That's a habit, that's just what I do. But I'm not looking at the dog's rear, I'm looking at that, from the back. Because I can see from the back of the dog where that elbow is coming in underneath the dog. So you can see it, I think, in that picture. And stop me if you ever have questions about this, just say, wait, yes?
Is that the same from a puppy up to an adult dog as well when you're trying to evaluate puppies?
Yes, the length of the bones themselves in proportion to each other are not going to change. where that shoulder blade lays in is gonna change a little bit, but yes, you can see great upper arm in a puppy. Not stacked on the table though. That's a whole different seminar. People spend way too much time stacking puppies on a table and taking pictures and choosing that way. Put them on the ground, get a cup of coffee and just watch them. That's where you're gonna see. I wanna see where those puppies stop and put their own elbows, not where I as a handler can put their elbow on a table. So I always tell people when I go see a litter of puppies, they wanna get out the table and the colored towels and the colored collars and the, everything. I'm like, no, later. Just put them down. Let me just watch them for 15, 20 minutes. And then, what am I doing on the table? I'm confirming with my hands what I already saw on the ground. Because that's what, when you show a dog, you're showing the dog, the judge should be doing most of its decision making on your dog moving and standing free. Going over a dog is just confirming things that you already saw in motion. So with puppies, let them see where do they stand? Do they stand with their elbows underneath each other? That's what I want. So this is an old picture from the 70s. She's not standing on her right rear leg. You can see that, so she's sort of off kilter. But I want you to look at that front. That is a hard to find front anymore. Okay, this is a dog from the 70s. But if you look at the angle, I don't even have to point it out to you. You can probably just see it. And I can guarantee that wasn't groomed in. Okay, that's just how it is. So, here's what I want you to look at. First of all, look how smooth that is. There is no right angle here at all. That is because the withers are not here. The withers are back here, where they should be. Down to the point of the shoulder, but look at the return of elbow, all the way back here. That is a very hard to find front. And if you have one or you find one or you need one, just keep looking. And it may be important, it may be necessary, this again is another seminar, to do what I call the courageous sidestep breeding. What I mean by that is it may not be the breeding that gets you your next qualified all-age dog or best in show dog, but it may be to correct a problem you have, and then the next generation you get that again and move forward with it. Not a lot of breeders are willing to do a sidestep breeding now, but it's something to think about if you're a breeder. That's courageous to be able to do something like that. If you find a front like that, if I found a stud dog with a front like that, I would use that dog and try to get that and then build on that the next generation. But it takes time to do that. Okay, so focus on the front. I have a couple of pictures, just pieces of a dog. So I want you to look at this front, and I want you to think, okay, where do you think the shoulder blade is? Look at the top line as the neck comes into the back and the withers. Is it smooth? Is it a right angle? Look at where the forechest is. I happen to know both these dogs and I've had hands on them, so the hair is not really, it's not just groomed to look like there's chest. There actually is forechest or not. And then where the elbow is. Okay, so there's this one. Okay. They are not exactly the same length, the scapula and the shoulder and the upper arm. Scapula is a little bit longer on this dog, but look at the angle. Okay, 90 degrees, it's probably more like 100. The 90 degrees is in dachshunds, yes. Dachshunds have a very extreme, definitely 90 degrees. In most dogs, even though people say we want 90 degrees, it's more like 100. It's not exactly a right angle there. Then we have another one. So again, go back to the top line, neck into shoulder. What difference do you see there?
Shoulders move laid back on this one.
Yeah, so you see how you have a much more abrupt angle where the neck meets the back, okay, than the other dogs. And then just take a look before I put the lines up there about where you think the upper arm and the scapula are. And compare it to the dog on the left. So now what do you see as far as length of bones in comparison to each other? Upper arm is much shorter.
And upright.
And, you know, it doesn't look like that's at the elbow, it is at the elbow. Coat on a golden means you have to feel where the elbow is. Because, and also, a lot of Goldens, you know, that patch, all our dogs have that, because they thud onto the floor. That may not necessarily be exactly where the elbow is, it's deceiving. So, you know, that's something, it's our job as a judge to find where the elbow is and not be distracted by the calluses or the hair or anything else. So, use two things about this dog. You already found the more abrupt angle up at the withers. And also the length of the scapula is definitely higher than more than the length of the upper arm, and the angle is definitely more open. Okay, that dog's elbow is not tucked underneath itself as well. So training your eye to look at those angles, the first thing is look how smooth on the top line. Yes, there's good groomers out there. They can groom it and make it look smoother than it is. But your hands are gonna tell you. When you come down and you run into shoulder blades, or your hand comes and goes, oh, it's smooth. That's wonderful. Doesn't happen real often. So, front assembly, balance, and proportion. So think about how they're linked, okay? Because we're gonna talk about proportion and why. So, take a look at her. This was a veteran. I want you to kind of think about her shoulder based on what we just talked about. Where are her shoulder blades? Where's her scapula? Where's her upper arm? How is it in balance with the rear? Just kind of take a look at that for a minute. It's a bitch. It was Sydney. And I'm only, if I name a dog, it's because they're long gone. If there's a dog in here that is still being shown, I'm not naming it. You can twist my arm, but I still don't name it. But she's gone.
Yeah.
All right, now we're gonna put the lines on there. Okay. So there's angles. So are they in balance?
No.
They're close.
Mostly.
They're not gonna be exact, but they're fairly close. At least you don't have one that's much more than the other. Think about the plumb line coming down from the point of her hip down, it's falling in front of her rear feet. Okay, that's where it should be. It's artfully groomed on the rear pastern, that's what people do. That's why people want a lot of coat back there so they can sculpt in what looks like a good hop joint. I put in where I think the hop joint really was. The line at the elbow is because we're gonna talk, our standard does not say the dog is 50-50. I don't know why it doesn't, I wish it did. Because it's standard retriever proportion. There are very few breeds that are not 50% ground to elbow and elbow to withers. Ground to elbow and elbow to withers is a standard retriever, pointer, setter, almost all of them. The only ones that are not are things like Clumbers, Sussex, Bulldogs, anything that is an aberration of a normal proportion, but they should be 50-50. So even though our standard doesn't say so, they should. So that's at the elbow. So look from the elbow to the ground and the withers to the elbow, and you're gonna see that it's roughly 50%. That's correct proportion. Okay, we have dogs who do not meet the 12-11 proportion. Not always because they're long in body, sometimes they're short on leg. Okay, and that will make the dog no longer 12-11. I didn't measure her, I'm guessing she's pretty close to 12-11. That's because 12-11 is just off square. The way I like to tell new judges about it is it's a weird proportion, 12-11. A 22-inch bitch, which is right in the middle, should be 24 inches long. So that's how you think about it. Middle of the road bitch, 22 inches tall, is 24 inches long. And we measure them not from the point of the shoulder, from the breastbone to the point of the hip, and that's important to know. Many breeds measure from the point of the shoulder to the point of the hip. Our standard says from the breastbone to the point of the hip. Some standards say from like Plumbers, withers to base of tail. Annie, who had her hand up.
Just because this stuff would be so well, but Connie Miller explained it's a square dog with
much, you're
That's
right.
your extra piece that gives you a
That's your
little-
extra.
Yeah, and I never had anybody tell me
Yep.
it was measured from forecast and not point of shoulder,
Okay,
so that explains it.
well, there you go.
Yeah.
And that's a very good way of saying it. I'm gonna use that. Connie, thank you, Connie.
Yeah, right?
Because this, I can't read that, this would be square. So and what Andy is saying is if you took this measurement from right here to here, that would be square, but you add that 3 inches right there of forechest, because they're supposed to have a well-developed forechest, now you're 12 to 11, not 11 to 11.
Good one, right?
Yeah, I'm stealing it totally. So, good balance, good proportion, 50% ground to elbow, elbow to withers. Good proportion, okay? That's a picture to kind of stick in your mind. Okay, so here's your turn. This is different. This is a young male. But I want you to take a look at that. I want you to start imagining where those lines would go. So what would your eye say about this dog and the angles on this dog and the proportion and all of that and the length of leg? Okay, have it in your head a little bit. Now we'll draw the lines. So what's different about this dog? And I like this dog, by the way. This is not a bad dog. I'm not doing that. But what's different about them?
It's a little overextended in the rear, so his pastern is not straight up and down like it should be.
Good. You, bing, bing, bing. This is stylized. Okay, so also look at the top line.
Sloping.
Sloping top line. Why?
And a shorter apron.
The dog is set too far back, the stylized show photo, probably pulling up for a toy. It's one of the biggest bugaboos because you look at show photos and they throw a toy and the dogs go like this. What that does is it straightens out their front and slopes their back. So that's probably what happened here. Threw a toy, and so now you have that. Looks like it's extreme. Still, it's roughly 50-50, maybe not quite. So ground to elbow, maybe that's more like 48-52, you know, not quite 50-50. But I'm glad you noticed that the overstretched rear and the sloping back changes the angles of the dog. Okay, so think about that. Now I'm going to go back to the bitch before and look at how she is stacked. Okay, more level back. Still probably pulling up for something they threw, but it's just a difference in presentation. One of the things I do tell a lot of judges is, and I'm sorry that I have to tell them this, but I say, do not judge top line in the stack, because we in the Golden Retriever breed have now created this look. And what happens when you're just baiting your dog, you're pulling them up, and you're baiting frantically, what's gonna happen to top lines? They're all gonna slope. So you go down a line of Goldens, like open dogs, and every one of those top lines is sloped except the one person who's free baiting their dog. Guess what I'm gonna be looking at? Okay, the free baited dog who has a level back. So that's what I tell judges, judge the top line in motion on the free stack. Don't judge it in the lineup because everyone's ruining it. We have developed this really weird handling style in Goldens that ruins the outline of the dog. It's what it is, but we can't judge based on that. So, we'll whip back through this guy. Okay, training your eye. Coat will hide many faults. From across the ring, here's the first thing I look at. I look at the top line, I look at the underline. Check the underline from the point of the elbow to the stifle and make sure it's shorter than the back line from withers to base of tail. I'll show you pictures what I mean by that. A short underline is going to show you that a dog has a better return of elbow and his proportions are going to be better than a dog with a long underline. So let me show you this. The top line, withers to base of tail, is there. Underline, elbow. So do you see how the withers to base of tail is definitely longer than elbow to stifle? That's the underline of the dog. Golden should have minimal tuck up. There should not be a lot of tuck up. Tuck up is this area right here. In some breeds, you have a lot of tuck up, and it specifies that they should have tuck up. Goldens is minimal tuck up, almost a straight underline. Labradors have a straight underline, Goldens have a little tuck up. Okay, there's the 50-50. Okay, so look at this. I want you to look at her top line and her underline. And compare the length from withers to base of tail and then elbow to stifle. Which one is longer?
Top.
Top line. Okay. So top line, underline. Okay, underline is caused by length of underline is caused by a couple things. Length of loin, first of all, but it's also caused by that return of elbow. So you see where her elbow is coming back underneath her, shortens up the underline. Okay, gives a better proportion. Same thing with this one. Top line, underline. Again, look at the return of elbow. Okay, front coming back underneath. Okay, questions on top line, underline, front assembly? I know that's a lot. And I will share this PowerPoint with you and you can give it to people if they want. Then you don't have to worry about like remembering something and things like that. That makes sense? I mean, the front assembly is tough, but if you think about where those bones are and what we're actually looking for, you'll understand about that. When we talk about gait, which we're gonna do right after feet, then you're gonna see it all in motion and why that matters. But I wanna make sure that we talk about feet, because that old phrase, for want of a hoof, the horse is lost, and I think it goes, for want of the horse, the rider is lost, for want of the rider, the battle is lost. So feet matter, and those of you who have horses know, without the right feet, you got no horse, right? That's the quickest way to a breakdown. It's not any different in dogs that are expected to run over rough terrain. You have a bad hare foot or a splayed foot, you're gonna have problems. Okay, that dog will have an injury and that will cause breakdown. Our standard says feet are medium sized, round, compact, and well knuckled with thick pads. That's all functional. It's not just because it's cute and pretty. That's a functional foot. Okay, that's important. Splayed or hare feet are to be faulted. Good feet, these are front feet. Okay, thick, well knuckled, thick pads, compact. Okay, you can just about see the thick pads on that first foot, the darker one, right? Second one as well, but that picture's not as good, it's a little bit blurry. But those are beautiful feet. It's funny, people say if you don't see anything else you like about a dog, you can say good feet. But you know what, I don't, because good feet are precious. And they're not that common. When you have good feet, don't lose them in a generation, because it's gonna be a while to get them back. Back feet, same thing. Rear feet are just as important. Same dog, by the way. Same two dogs, front feet and rear feet. Okay, they're good feet. The rear feet, compact, well knuckled, thick pads. Those are strong feet. So don't ignore that. That is key. Everything about the dog's rear hindquarters and front quarters hinges on that. If they have a great shoulder and a flat splay foot or a hare foot, it's not going to be a really sound front. So feet matter. Okay, gait. So here's what our standard says: free, smooth, powerful, and well coordinated, showing good reach. The words missing in here that people seem to think, it nowhere says tremendous reach and drive. Nowhere does it say flying around the ring as fast as possible. Okay, that does more to mess up a dog's gait. There are some of us who will have people move again and again for two reasons. I want slower and I want loose lead. I recently judged Well, I'll just tell you, at Westminster, there was a very nice dog in there that I asked the handler to move 3 times on a looser lead. They never did, and I didn't keep the dog. Because I could not see the true movement on that dog. And it broke my heart, because under my hands, that was a really good dog. But I thought, either you don't understand what I mean by a loose lead, and I couldn't really demonstrate it, but loose lead reflects true gait. And there's a couple pictures in here that are gonna show you what happens when you change that. So gait is free, smooth, powerful, well coordinated, showing good reach. Doesn't say fast. So slow it down, loosen your lead. Judges will go, oh, that's nice. Big hair go fast is not a thing in this breed, okay? It wins a lot, but big hair go fast is not in our standards. Legs turn neither in nor out. They should be straight columns of support, not toeing out, not hocking in, and feet tend to converge towards center line of balance. That's just normal movement. Think about yourself. When I'm walking, my feet can be a certain distance apart. My hips can be a certain distance apart. As I pick up speed, if I don't converge my feet towards center line, I'm gonna look like I'm waddling really fast. Because we do that as humans. When we pick up speed, our feet converge towards center line. That's normal. So Goldens need to do that. If they're moving this way, there is a flaw. Something in the shoulder assembly or overangulation in the rear, they're getting out of their own way. They should converge towards center line. In the rear and the front. And the convergence in the rear should be at the foot, not at the hock. That's not where it should come together. It should come together at the feet like a V. Okay? That's what the standard says. Free, smooth, powerful, and well coordinated. So there's several things I want you to, and there's another dog who's long gone. I want you to notice several things in these next photos. And I'm gonna pop this. I want you to look at this. There's a triangle. That's from the toe of the dog reaching forward, and then you can't really see it in this picture because of the lighting. But the other edge of that triangle, the lower edge, is where the other front foot, the tip of the other front foot. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So you bottom of the triangle, and then the elbow is where the top point, the apex, is that the apex, mathematicians? Sure, I'll go with that. That's at the elbow. There's a triangle. If you put another triangle there at the rear, they're pretty close to the same. Okay, where the dog's rear foot is pushing, where the other rear foot is coming to the middle, and where the stifle is. So those are equal triangles underneath her. That's what you're looking for. That's balance of movement. The other thing to look for is how far she's reaching. If you drop a line from her nose, she's reaching just past her nose. That's good reach. When the standard says good reach, that's good reach. The other thing I want you to notice, and it's an important one, is how far her feet are off the ground. They're
Easy
barely off
Yeah.
the ground. That is efficient movement. Free, smooth, powerful, and well coordinated. The well coordinated is the balance. Same reach as it is drive. Free, not strung up, smooth, and powerful. Powerful is in our standards several times. So this is not a petite little breed. This is powerful. Okay, that's something to remember. So that's an example of a very nice moving dog. Top line is level, tail is coming up at about, what, 1:30, 2 o'clock on that dog? I don't know. But that's acceptable tail carriage. Okay, that's fine. Doesn't have to be straight off the back, but that's correct. Head is up and forward, not cranked up. So take a look at this one. Look at several things. Look at the triangles underneath. Look where she is reaching, how far compared to where her nose is. Look how far her feet are off the ground. Look at her top line, tail carriage, and head. Beautiful. Pretty efficient. Mostly, barely off the ground. That's really nice. What is the one thing I might fault in how she's being shown?
Not a
Leash too
Leash,
tight.
tight lead. okay? Now, she's moving fine even with her head cranked up. I would rather see her with her head a little forward. That would be in better balance because she's still moving well, but that's gonna tire out more than if the head was down and forward. So that's about the only thing I critique, but that's really nice movement. Different style dog. Same positives though. Equal triangles, reaching to his nose, level back, level tail carriage, head forward, feet barely off the ground. Now, it's a lot easier to see this in a picture than it is in motion.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you're watching them move, you have to train your eye to see it in motion. But first you need to know what you're looking for. The two easiest things to look for are gonna be how far the feet come off the ground and whether the dog is staying level. So if you train yourself to look at that first, then you can start putting in the balance of the reach and the drive. So it doesn't matter what style the dog is, they either move well or they do not. So a note about head carriage. This is an endurance situation. It's not, I mean, yes, they do sprints to get to their birds, but they're out of the field all day. And so, the whole duck blind thing and sit still and then swim and sit still and swim. First of all, duck blinds, like, they do that when it's really cold out. I'm never gonna do that. Never in my life am I gonna sit in a duck blind in the cold and be wet and drink coffee. It's not gonna happen. So, in most situations on land, this is primarily an upland game dog. Doesn't mean they can't do water. They do water just fine. But a Labrador is primarily a water dog that also does upland work. They had to, on that big estate in Scotland, be an endurance breed. They had to have stamina. So think about head carriage and tail carriage in balance and preserving energy over time. Can a dog move with head up and tail high? Of course they can. They can look really pretty doing it. But which is most efficient over time and distance? That's something to kind of think about. And so here's an example of correct head carriage. And I will guarantee this dog would be faulted for having its head down too low in the ring. What a shame, because that's correct. She's conserving energy.
Lovely dog.
What's that? Absolutely. Yep. And think about the difference in the neck muscles,
Neck
the
and
shoulder
spine,
muscles,
yeah.
if you let your head just drop. And again, look at the triangles, the level, the tail carriage, the head forward, she's reaching past her nose. It's great. Okay, now, here's a dog. Before you look at his head, his feet are barely off the ground. He's reaching, he's driving, he's level back. But look at his head. He's being kind of strung up. Doesn't mean he can't move, but that is not going to be as comfortable over time as the one before. That's going to wear out faster because it takes a lot more of your muscles in your neck and shoulder to keep your head up. If I run like this, right, my neck's gonna hurt. Okay, if I let my head drop and I do this, you can do it yourself. You can try to do this, and you feel all these muscles, do this, and everything relaxes. So a dog can move well, and it'll look good, but compared to that, 6 hours later, I can probably guarantee she's gonna still be going. And the other dog is gonna be a little sore.
It's the same with horses. Let's say like in the movie Black Beauty, I was a horse rider. I grew up with horses, and in the old days, the carriage horses, they would use the bearing rein, which held the head up very high. It was very stylish and prancy, but those horses would have all kinds of back and shoulder and neck problems because they were constantly forced to pull the carriage with their head up like that. So if they were able to drop their head, then anatomically that's how they can push into it and use their strength. Same with the dog.
Okay, interesting. And we judge them by the trot in the ring. When you watch a dog running in master, they're running.
Ideally.
In a perfect world,
If not,
they're running.
If not, Annie will fix it.
Yeah, they should be, at least on the way out, they should be running. But we judge them in a trot. We can't judge them running in the ring. That would be kind of fun though. Would you let your dog just run down to that corner and back? But
It's the back part.
this is the endurance gait. Okay, the sprint for the bird is important, but this is the endurance gait. And so it's interesting about horses, never thought about that, but that would be difficult. So it does make a difference, and they're gonna wear out or not. Okay, so what about carrying a bird? I was glad to be able to find a couple of pictures. So what anatomical features are involved in holding a large bird above cover and out of the water?
You know what? All I can think of is eye and ear placement.
Yep.
Neck and
We
front
went
of
over
circle.
like their neck carriage and that sort of thing.
Yep.
And
but
what
then-
impact does it have? If they have good reach and drive and balance and efficient movement, they're taking fewer steps to go the same distance.
See what she said. So it matters when they're carrying a bird. Birds are heavy. I don't know how much does a cock pheasant weigh?
Oh gosh. 4 pounds?
4 pounds?
4 or 5 pounds maybe?
How much does a wet mallard drake weigh? Yeah, the goose.
More than that.
A lot more than
That's
that.
my kind of answer, more than that.
Yeah.
That's good. What'd you say, Jeff?
5 or 6 pounds.
5 or 6 pounds? Okay.
That's it?
For
Seems
a,
like they're
that
heavy.
is,
Reduce the price.
For a dog that's only about 60 pounds, that's a
so
lot.
60-pound bitch carrying 10% of her weight.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a lot in your mouth. So,
A full-grown mallard weighs up to 3 pounds, so
3
then you
pounds.
add wet.
and then when they're wet, then they're gonna add another pound of water probably, right? So the anatomical features, yes, and we're not covering head today because we just have limited time, but yes, their ear placement, their eye placement, whether they have stop, and what I call a slowdown is gonna be less able to see over a bird than a stop. The neck, the shoulder, that front assembly really matters when you're carrying something heavy in your mouth. It lets you be able to carry that bird and have good reach and drive. So here are a couple of pictures. This is a dog moving with a duck through the water, coming out of the water. So I want you to look at the drive, okay? That dog is driving off of the rear, and I guess about where the front pad would be based on the size of the dog. And arrow's a little off, maybe a little to the right of that. But the dog is reaching to its nose. So think about the photos of moving that we had before, and the dog was reaching to its nose. It's still reaching to its nose in the water with the bird in its mouth. And that dog is carrying it because it has strong neck and shoulder muscles. It can carry that bird up out of the water. So that's efficient. Okay? That matters. There's the drive on the back. Okay, same with this dog. Okay, first of all, okay, Klaus pointed this out to me. I had this picture. She said, "Oh, that's awesome." Someone blew the head right off that pheasant. I know.
Is that a pheasant or is it a?
Oh my gosh, I didn't even notice that. I was like, you're right. Look at the
Yeah.
feet.
The feet's gotta be a turtle.
No, it's actually a pheasant. If you can see it more clearly, it's a big cock pheasant, but it has no head.
It's a
And
Oh,
side
jeez.
Okay, didn't even notice that.
Well,
But,
no
yeah,
gravy
you're
for
right.
them.
But here's what I want you to notice. Look where his front feet is reaching. He's reaching under that bird. Okay, that's efficient. When Annie said a little bit ago, the more steps you take, the faster you're gonna break down. I mean, it's more efficient to take fewer steps. That dog is reaching underneath the bird. He has a strong neck and shoulder assembly so that he can hold that bird up. He is reaching. If he was taking little short steps, that's gonna wear out pretty quickly. But that dog has reach, like we're asking for in the breed ring, in the field. So it matters. It is part of their function as a hunting dog to have that. Okay, so just to review, there's the skeleton, scapula, humerus or upper arm, the balance of angles, the fact that this dog is 12 to 11, because they're really square plus the forechest. I love that one. But all of those pieces are going together to watch that movement. And what you saw with the balance of angles, the balance of triangles underneath, the balance of triangles, and I didn't show you bad moving pictures for a reason. As a teacher, you never teach kids what's not right. You only teach what's right. because you don't want them to be getting anything else. So I'm not showing you bad pictures. I want you having in your head what is correct. Without those balance of angles, front to rear, you can't get the balanced triangles. That would not look that way. And when you are watching dogs, you're gonna see, if you see high kick in the rear or a high lift in the front, that is because they lack balance of angles. They have to get out of their own way. So you want that barely off the ground movement.
So Nancy, do you, have a little folder on your computer that's bad pictures? Cause I do.
I do. Oh yeah, I have a whole, it's all even on my phone.
Oh, nice.
Oh yeah, yeah, I have one that called seminar photos and I have one called other. Because those are the ones, because if people want to see, well, what it would really look like, I'll show them, but I don't put it in my presentation, because I don't want them to see it.
Well, you don't want anybody to be like, oh, that's my dog.
There's that.
It's a bad example.
There's that.
I got him.
I mean, mostly I use dogs that are gone, but not always. There are a few dogs in here where there were good examples that are still alive. But yeah, I have that folder on my computer and on my phone. Okay, so a word about soundness and stamina. Here's something that I am learning and working with friends who do conformation and field work, most hunt test work at their kennel. They train for that. And here's something that they have discovered. There are two kinds of stamina. There's mental soundness and stamina, and there's physical soundness and stamina. So we sometimes think about stamina just physically, but mental stamina, if you're trying to train a dog to a high level in the field, really matters. Okay, they have to be able to persevere and keep going. And when a trainer doesn't get a dog till it's 4 or 5 years old, and it's never been made to do anything, mental stamina is a challenge to try to get that dog to persevere. So as you are raising your own dogs, remember that there's two parts to stamina. Mental stamina is important. Do things with your dog when they're little. Don't let them just sit around and be cute and then expect them to do something later. It's a benefit to the show ring for sure. A friend of mine called and was kind of distraught and upset because people are starting to show dogs, show Goldens, and then they don't win and they quit. And then they're either out of the sport or they go get the next dog and they try with that one. And he was really very concerned about this and saying we need to change this somehow. And I said, okay, so let's go back to when you and I got our first dogs. We got them at about the same time in the mid-70s, mid-70s. My first dog, Shader, my first show dog, Shader, lost a lot because he matured like Golden should mature. He looked like a spider for a while. I mean, just all leg, no body. And he was losing to fluffy, cute, darling dogs that matured very quickly. So what did I do? I didn't quit. I got a CV on him, I got a CDX on him, I got a WC, kept looking at him. Finally, I think he was a CDX, WCX, and then I went back in the ring and he finished really fast. Because he was mature, not just physically, mentally. Because I had worked with him, I had taught him things. He had learned how to persevere, he'd learned to think. And I went in the breed ring and he was like a sparkling superstar because he was mentally conditioned to do it. So I think that what I told this friend was, maybe we need to be looking at mentoring differently. Is not mentoring for one venue or the other, but mentoring, if we really believe that they're primarily a hunting dog, then we should be mentoring people for the dual dog from the get-go and helping them understand they're not ready for the show ring. Let's do this other stuff. When I had Shader, there was obedience, field, and show. That was it. There was no agility, there were no hunt tests, there was no rally, barn hunt, fast cat. It goes on and on and on. Now there's no excuse for people not doing something with their dog. There's a million things to do. And how nice for those dogs to get the mental stamina while they're building physical stamina. And then when you're ready to walk in the ring, you walk in and win. So it really is an important thing. I told Kristen last night, I'm gonna be looking to the East Coast because on the East Coast you have multiple people doing exactly that.
Yeah.
You've got Annie, you've got Kristen, you've got Kelly and Beth up in Pennsylvania, you've got, I think, Cindy Price doing some of that. You've got multiple people on the East Coast who show their dogs in combination and run high levels of hunt tests. West Coast, we got nothing. Midwest.
Colorado's full of them.
Colorado is.
And Lisa
but that's
Newton,
not the
who I
West
think is in Northern California.
See, you
Well,
don't even
sort
have to
of,
cross
or
the
Idaho.
Rockies.
We discussed that.
Well,
She
and
said
it's,
she's not
and
in
it's,
Idaho or
yeah,
Montana.
I think she's,
Still west to
well,
us.
and that's the thing, is in the
Anything west
West,
of
you know,
most-
our
west of
states
the
are
Mississippi
really
is west.
big.
Yeah.
So Colorado, yes, Colorado, that's where I'm gonna go next, is to Mile High.
Yes.
And work with them, because I think they could build it there. But I'm gonna be contacting all y'all here in the East to say, okay, how do you recruit? What do you do? Because I wanna build this elsewhere. You've got a good thing going, and if you guys aren't taking advantage of these people, please do, because that's what's gonna build your dog. So, that's my thing, mental soundness and stamina, but physical soundness and stamina, it has to be both. If you're gonna do both things with your dog at a fairly high level. Anything else on that part? Okay, coat. My favorite topic right now. Standard says dense and water repellent with good undercoat. Outer coat firm and resilient, lying close to body. Okay, that's huge right there. Firm and resilient, lying close to body. And then maybe straight or wavy. We're still trying to teach judges that that's true.
That wavy's allowed.
Oh
We're
my
trying,
God.
we try, we do, but people want to straighten it out. Now, the dog on the bottom left, that was his coat. It was straight. There's nothing wrong with a straight coat. It's fine. And short, we're gonna talk a lot about that. That's a straight coat, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying wavy's better, but it's not better than wavy. Wavy is fine, okay? So there's straight and wavy.
Or light or dark.
Yeah, that's a whole different
Yeah.
thing. Okay,
You have
straight and
alcohol
wavy.
involved for that discussion.
Straight and wavy.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter. If the texture is correct, it doesn't matter if it's straight or wavy. So, we're trying. If those of you with wavy coated dogs, we're trying. And, you know, the problem is some professional handlers and owners will take that coat on their right and flat iron
Oh, I
it,
know.
and dry it, and
It's
towel it.
awful.
And it will look so, you know what that feels like? When you are judging a coat on the right and they have flattened it and straightened it with everything they can possibly do,
Eek.
it feels so bizarre. It doesn't even feel like a Golden's coat anymore. It feels kind of like a collie, like a,
Oh, wow.
like what? It feels anhydrous.
Yeah.
I'm using that line too. But it's more like a collie, like a harsh, it's very strange. So when you try to straighten out that wavy coat,
Don't do
no,
it.
just leave it alone. That's perfectly
Show the
fine.
right judges.
So if you have a wavy coat, be proud of that wavy coat. You can get it under control, that's fine, but wavy, straight wavy is fine. Okay, this in the color is really off, but I want you to show you this picture because I don't even have to touch that coat to know that that wraps like a jacket. So I want you just to look at how that looks, okay? You can see it along the top line. Do you see where the coat is sort of waving? There's like a pattern along the top line and then it comes down. Okay, that coat is wrapping like a jacket. That's what they're supposed to look like. They shouldn't be sticking straight out. They should wrap. And I could touch that coat, I did, I was judging this dog back in, I don't know, 2000 or something. So, that coat did feel really good, the texture was really nice, and it wrapped correctly, but you can even see that without even having to touch it. That is a correct wrap of coat. So, I do not know what's going on with coats right now. The first time I have ever had this was at Westminster.
Wow.
There were dogs in the ring. I thought, well, that's an interesting looking coat. And when I pressed on the coat, my handprint stayed in it.
Oh,
And it wasn't product. Okay, it
Eek.
wasn't because there was product. There is no top coat. It is like a plush toy. Wow. That's what it, and everything, all of this, the body coat, They were not in my final 15 in the ring. Because that's just aberrant coat. I don't even know where it's coming from. I honestly have got to try to find out from people. Is it because they have removed all of the top coat? Or are people breeding for plush toys? Not sure, but it's aberrant.
Yeah.
It is so strange. So I'm not sure what that's all about.
My favorite part of people breeding for coats like that are the 8 other puppies in the litter that go to pet homes, and then the breeder says, "Oh, they shaved them. It's so horrible." We'll put breeding for it.
Yeah, because really.
That's the kind of coat you have to shave
Yeah.
to manage it. when they're
Because
10 years old.
that is going to mat because there's no top coat that's resilient anymore. It's all coat. But literally, I thought, what is this like? And I thought it's like memory foam.
Wow.
It is so strange. So I hope this is just a quick fad and they thought I might like it and we never see it again. But anyway, I didn't.
Nancy, they normally don't breed that though, but they wanted to win a ribbon that day.
You're probably right, because they wouldn't bring that to me under normal circumstances. Okay, excessive length, open coats and limp soft coats are very undesirable. Very undesirable. That's what the standard says. So, excessive length, open coats and limp soft coats. Why? Look at this dog bringing the duck out of the water. What's she doing? There's water running off of her
Oh,
coat.
yeah.
The top is dry.
The top is, and look at her tail. I mean, yeah, that's what they're doing. This is their job. So all this excessive coat, that wonderful dog Shader, my first show dog, had such an incorrect coat. He was a really good dog in a lot of ways, but he had coat like a setter. He had no undercoat. He had this long, beautiful dark coat with all this long stuff.
Pepper stuff.
And if any of you have ever been in California and trained at a place called Prado, dog training, it is nothing but cockleburrs if you get within 10 feet of the water anyway. And I had bloody thumbs from unwinding cockleburrs out of that
Coat.
silky, settery coat. So I have lived with an incorrect coat trying to do this, and I don't want to do it again ever. It's awful on the dog, it's awful on me, and I don't want to have to spray Pam in my dog's coat just so I can go field training, which is what people do.
Sure.
I don't want to have to do that. So this is what they're supposed to do, and that's why those kinds of coats are very undesirable. Yes?
I've heard the term open coat, but I don't really know what that is.
Good question. Open coat, think of it this way, it is open to the elements, including water. So if a dog, remember that picture of the wrapping coat? Okay, that jacket? That is not an open coat. If a dog's coat is standing off the body, it allows water to get right into the skin. I did a seminar in Pennsylvania last weekend, and we did the classroom stuff, and then we went out to the field. And we put the dogs, we ran some singles and some like senior length doubles. And what I had everybody do when the dogs came out of the water with correct coat is the dogs shook, and then I had them walk up and down the gallery and had people look. And those dogs with the correct coats were still dry at the skin after they had done a double in the water. There were a couple of dogs with open coats that did the same thing, and they were wet at the skin. Because the water can get in through an open coat and penetrate to the skin. That's open. You want the coat to be closed like a jacket, so that water can't get in. Yes?
Can't you produce an open coat while you would want to by over blow drying your dog?
Well, yes, you can, Susie. And it's pretty common. I don't know why Fluffy is better, but you will see dogs with correct coats. The problem is a correct coat, when you try to blow dry it open, then it doesn't work. It doesn't look right. You know, it's so nice to see a dog come in with just a really nice wrapped coat. There were a lot of them today that have beautiful wrapped coats laying down. And yes, blow drying everything backwards and back brushing it all, and then the dog shakes. And then if you're really good, put mousse in the coat too, and then it really will stand off the dog. They've been doing it since the 70s. It's not new.
Yeah.
So, purpose and function of the Golden's coat is the slide we saw before. These are enough, and I'm going to just drill this in you with about 6 different pictures. So often I hear handlers and owners say this, well, that's great, but he doesn't have enough coat.
Yeah.
We hear this all the time. There's not enough coat. Okay? This is enough. That's a boy and a girl. That is enough. Okay? That's correct. Neither of these dogs has settery, long, dripping coat. Neither of these dogs has tremendous furnishings, swishing coat. Okay? That's enough coat. Okay, so enough and correct. Again, enough and correct. The one on the left is what people would say, oh, she's in her summer undies. Okay, so I don't know if she was just out of coat for summer or she had a litter, I don't know. But you see kind of the wispy tail thing and all of that, but it's enough, it's plenty, it's fine, okay? Show that. Judges need to see that. The one on the right, that is a thick, heavy coat, but does he have a lot of stuff hanging down? No. One of the things that really bothers me, I don't think I have any, because I didn't put bad pictures in. Okay, on dogs like this, if I see a dog standing here and I can see coat hanging down,
Yeah.
because there's such extreme coat, even on the inside of the thighs, that it's hanging down here like a curtain, that is just wrong. I don't want to take that out of the field with me. I don't want to see all of this so long that they had to scissor trim it across. Okay, that's wrong. I don't want to see all kinds of stuff hanging down here like a curtain. What I really don't want to see, and I talked to a handler that used to do this, and she said, I don't do it anymore. You're right, it looked bad. Was stripping all the hair off the upper arm and then leaving this big mane.
Oh.
And then it
And
comes
I'm
down
like,
to a
it's the
point.
Lion King look.
Yeah.
Because you look at those dogs in a picture, and it was on Facebook a lot, I'm like, that is bizarre. It's all, you can tell it's been so tightly thinned. I guess that's supposed to make it look like they have a much better upper arm, I don't know. And then there's this big lion mane. Oh, so these are enough. The dog on the top left, the owner of that dog, this dog is back from in the 80s. That owner was told all the time by handlers, oh, you could never win with that dog. He doesn't have enough coat. And then they got to the right handler and he finished. Amazing. Because that
Gorgeous
handler
dog.
said, oh, I'm good with this. And just made the texture what it was supposed to be, and the dog was really nice. Enough coat. So if you have a dog with the correct coat, there are judges who will and judges who won't. You're gonna have to be studious about that. And find a handler who says, yes, it's enough. Okay, big hair, go fast, remember? No, this is
No.
not a big hair, go fast. So that's enough coat. So here's what I'm gonna tell you, and then if anybody has questions, please ask. This is what I believe, okay? That our goal is guardians of our breed. If we are breeding and showing and training our breed in Goldens, we are guardians of our breed. If you do agility, breeding 45-pound Goldens so that they can be as fast as a Border Collie, that's not being a guardian of our breed.
No.
Get a Border Collie.
Yeah.
Right? That's fine. I have no problem with that. Susie Bluford, I don't know if you know who she is. She
Yes.
owns Sunstreak of Collinwood, the sire of my first show dog. Susie wanted to go into agility. She really fell in love with it. So guess what? She
Got
went out of Goldens and got Border Collies. I have more respect for that than breeding 45-pound Goldens so that they're fast as a Border Collie. If we're guardians of our breed, I don't want to breed a 40-pound Golden that, you know, has all kinds of issues, but it's really fast. It's got go in the field. These were not bred to be that. Okay, a 45-pound dog with a lot of go in the field, that's an artificial game that we've created. So, you know, they can get a black whippet, but they also call field glass. But anyway, but that's also an aberration, because that's not what that breed was bred to do either. So, by the same token, if we breed a 95 or 100-pound Golden with hair to the ground, and bone this big so that it can be competitive in the breed ring, that's not being a guardian of the breed, right? That's just ridiculous. So it's extremes that we have to guard against, any extreme, either direction, for whatever venue we're talking about, and then being happy enough with that dog who is moderate, okay? And it's okay to be moderate. So breed dogs, and this is not my quote, this is Klaus's quote. We must breed dogs who do not have to overcome their conformation or temperament to do the job they were meant to do. That's a pretty good statement, right? They can do it. I can get a 95-pound dog to get a junior hunter.
You bet.
I could probably get it to do a senior hunter, but it might be painful. But I could do it, right? But what did that dog have to overcome to do the job they were meant to do? That's not fair. And that's not our job as guardians of the breed. So that's really, and the video, the link to the video is gonna show the job they were meant to do. It's what this breed was meant to do in Scotland. So avoid the extremes and go from there. And there's the final shot. It's primarily a hunting dog. Okay? And that statement from our standard is really important. So keep that in mind. If you do that, overall appearance, balance, gait, and purpose, you will not breed to the extremes.
Yeah.
Because the component parts are the extremes. If you breed for coat, that's breeding for an extreme. If you breed for drive, that's an extreme. Doesn't mean you don't breed toward those things, but overall appearance, balance, gait. Our judges are supposed to judge on that, and I believe we should be breeding for that too. So, questions, comments?
I do have a
Wonderful.
question.
No, Annie has a question? I'm so surprised.
Yes, I wanna hear your take on it.
Okay.
Recently, I talked to a very well-known breeder judge, you would all know. And, we were at a CCA, and there was one dog in the whole group who was a very nice dog, but he was enormous. Not
Okay.
overweight.
Yeah.
He weighed 90 pounds.
Just big, muscle.
Beautiful dog.
Yeah.
Just
Big.
very large dog.
Yeah.
And so after the event, I asked this person who was judging, what do you say to that person? Because to me, our standard, while not a disqualification, has the only quantifiable point of our standard is height and weight
Right.
and proportion.
In proportion, right.
And it seems to me for show dogs, weight, nobody cares.
I agree.
And here's a dog that is a good 15 to 20 pounds above the weight.
Right.
And he said, they said, right? To protect me, not Susan. Well, you know, they wrote the standard back when dogs weren't so big. Literally, they said that. And I said, well, should we throw everything out too because we bred them to be a certain way? And I know my dog that weighs fighting weight, 65 to 67 pounds, a male,
Mm-hmm.
constantly. It's shown at all breed shows.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's real pretty, but he's really small.
Yeah.
He is within the standards, 23 inches and 67.
Yeah.
Oh, but I prefer a larger dog.
So I prefer.
Like, what do you say to all of this? Because it's
I know.
spelled out in our standard, yet everybody ignores it.
So the actual answer, well, that's a many parts question.
Right?
You probably wouldn't have heard me say that statement that judge said. Just say.
I couldn't
Okay.
even like come back at it, like I
You
didn't
can't.
know what to say.
You go, oh, okay. So, as far as the weight, 65 to 75 in pounds, and people will say, oh my gosh, that's so small.
No, it's not.
It's not, okay? So, the reason there's a 10 pound range.
Which is huge for an animal the size.
Huge for a 24-inch dog.
Right.
10 pounds, okay? 23-inch male, 65 pounds. That's in proportion. That's fine. It's moderate bone. 24-inch dog, 65 pounds, probably too lean or too fine, but 75 pounds, okay. Now, our standard allows an inch either way, so weight would go along with that. So if I now have a 24 3/4 inch dog, he's probably gonna be 80, 82 pounds. I'm fine with that, right? When you get into the 90-pound range,
No.
that's just a lot of dog. I will use my other breed, Labradors. I only have one Labrador right now. He's 5 years old. He has a waistline, and you can actually see his ribs.
Wow.
He is probably, but he is a big boned dog, and he has a head like, it's ridiculous. I stopped showing him because he's just massive. He's 105 pounds.
Oh my goodness.
I know, right? So, he's a massive dog. He's athletic. That dog that dog is an athlete. And he's hard as a rock. He is not unfit. He's massive. I stopped showing him because I'm like, no, just no. That's too much dog. So, that's my choice. We all have to make a choice about whether to carry on with something that we know is not in the standard. 105-pound Labrador is not in our standard, okay? A 90-pound Golden might be if he's just about at 25 inches and hard as a rock because muscle weighs a lot. But that's pushing it. But to say that they used to be, so think back to that picture at the beginning of the dogs lying there. Okay, no, those were big
those were
enough
not small
dogs.
They were
Those were not
certainly,
fine bone
yeah.
dogs. I bet those dogs weighed a good 75 pounds, those
Sure.
boys. Those were substantial dogs. The breed has not changed that much. So we don't change our preference to meet, we don't change the standard to meet the current fads.
Yeah.
And that's why we don't open our standard up for revision. Because a lot of people have a lot of things they want to change in the standard. And as soon as you open that up to the membership, it's going to be a nightmare. So that's why our standard, people say, well, we should just change this in the standard. One of the things that we've thought about changing, I was on that committee too, was not disqualifying for height in 6 to 9 or under a year. Okay, the Labrador standard does specify that they're only disqualifiable over 12 months of age. Yeah, I'd like that in our standard too. The reason it's not in there, honestly, is because we open it up for one thing,
Yeah.
then you've opened it up for everything. And that's really why the Breed Standard Committee is saying, danger walks there. Because
Yeah.
think about the other things that we would do. Size, coat, color, all of it.
Yeah.
And so that's why.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Questions?
I have a question about the
Yes.
standard. Has it been changed at all over the years?
Oh, yeah. It's been the last actual change was in the 80s. I don't know which year, 82, 83, something. 83? Yeah, somewhere around there. That was actual changes to the standard. But after that, it was reformatted in the late 90s.
Yeah.
Because AKC wanted everyone's standards to be in the same order.
Right.
But nothing was changed in it, it was just reformatted. So it hasn't been changed for a long time. So, and it's different. One thing that's interesting is to take the British standard, the American standard, and the FCI standard and just compare them. The FCI standard is way shorter. The UK standard is shorter, but there's a lot of similarities. One of the things that's glaringly different is that ours is the only standard that specifies proportion. So it's why in Great Britain and Australia and Scandinavia, you'll see a lot of dogs that are longer because their standard doesn't specify a proportion. Ours does. So that's why we're so picky about keeping them square with extra for the forechest. So that's a good thing. But it's interesting to compare them. And except for that and color, because all the other standards allow cream, except ours. Other than that, they're really not that different. The wording is very similar.
No,
Bite, yes.
height, but not height.
Not height. Yeah, there's recommended. Plus FCI has a whole bunch of other things that you have to disqualify for. Health things,
Oh,
which
wow.
I will tell you as a judge, when I'm judging in Sweden or someplace, and they sit you down and they tell you if you're not a judge from that area, you must disqualify for these health
Neat.
reasons.
You're suddenly a veterinarian?
Yes, and I think, oh, okay, thank you.
How can you tell?
I know, breathing disorders.
Wow.
Okay, You can see, I can see things that I'm trained to see. You know, you're supposed to disqualify a Labrador who's overweight.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, come on.
I don't know how those dogs get around.
Well, some of the pigs on sticks don't get around very well, but I have never shown a pig on sticks, in my own defense. But I mean, how do you, your overweight and my overweight is gonna look different. So anyway, I digress. But comparing the standards is really very.
I was going to say a quick note. If you're interested in comparing the standards, there's a book called Golden Retrievers Today by Valerie Foss.
Oh, yeah.
And she actually has a section where she has a Canadian judge, a German judge, and a U.S. judge, I believe.
Nice.
Marcia Schler, I think, was the U.S.
Okay,
judge.
yeah.
And they put a picture of a dog, a head, and a standing shot. And then those 3 different judges go over it and give you an eval right up
Oh,
of that
that's
dog.
nice.
And they do it with like 5 or 6 dogs and bitches. And it's just really interesting. And she talks
would
about
be.
the differences. And you can see there's perspectives from these different judges from different countries. It's a good. If you go on, like, just Google it. You can get it on like Amazon for like $5
I'm
used.
sure.
It's an awesome book. It was from the 90s.
It is a great book,
Yeah.
Valerie Foss's book. Those people were on a panel when I went to that symposium in Great Britain. Marcia was on the panel, Valerie Foss, Joan Tudor was still alive. It was fascinating to listen to their perspectives. And so, but then the color wars broke out and I'm like, okay, so here we go. But, so-
Joan Tudor, interesting enough, is the breeder of her sire. So
Oh,
she's like
the
just
Camrose
two
dog?
generations removed from Cabas Christopher. So if you
Oh.
want to look at, if you want to say that the dogs have changed so much, her great grandsire is Camrose Cabas Christopher, who was born in like 1963. So
Something
and he
like that.
still stands up, and she, it hasn't changed that much,
No,
and it
they
shouldn't.
really haven't.
So
They
Yeah.
haven't. Yeah, Camrose dogs are fascinating. Okay, well, if you have other questions, feel free to ask, but thank you. And
you.
carry
Thank
on.
you.
You're welcome.